Hey everybody, welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 97, The Stepford Wives. We didn't expect it, but this ended up being a nice follow-up to last episode's look at Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, except that maybe we feel a little differently about the main character's husband. Your mileage may vary, of course. But before we unpack and get settled into Stepford, let's talk about our next 3 episodes. It won't stop being crazy to us that Ari and I are coming up on 100 episodes of Adapter Parish, but here we are, and we really wanted to make episode 100 something special. We wanted to do something big. In 2 weeks, we will be beginning our 3-part look at Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. For episodes 98 and 99, we'll be talking about the original 1862 novel and a list of the major English and French language screen adaptations of the story of Jean Valjean from 1934 all the way to today. And then, in episode 100, we will dive into Les Mis, a musical that's near and dear to our hearts. Part 1 will be out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, August 10th. We've been working on this one for a long time, and we hope you enjoy it. All right, if you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 97, The Stepford Wives. Hello, welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Ari Lipshaw, and today we are talking about why I am not and will never be a Stepford wife.
Yes, because we would never move to Stepford, and I would never do that to you. Wink.
Yeah, this book made me a little paranoid.
Were you scared of me?
A little bit.
I haven't joined any clubs or anything like that.
Well, it's funny too because we were driving through another town, and there's this like creepy mansion up on the hill, and it's literally called the Women's Club. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, so I guess it's the Stepford Husbands here.
Oh, you mean 1996 is the Stepford Husbands?
Yeah.
Which we didn't watch
We
for
didn't
this.
watch that one. No.
Someone I feel bad. Someone recommended on Twitter that we watch Revenge of the Stepford Wives from 1980, which was a TV sequel with Don Johnson, who's great. And we didn't watch it. We watched the end together.
Yeah.
Just before we recorded.
Like 2 minutes of it.
And like having watched it, you know, it exists. I don't know how relevant it is to our conversation.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that I say that, it is relevant. It's going to come back up. But anyway, we are talking about the Stepford Wives.
Yes.
I feel like the Stepford Wives is something that it's one of those ones we do where like part of it is in the culture, but maybe not a lot of people have actually seen it or read it.
Yeah, because the book is a little different from the movie, and I feel like maybe people our age haven't necessarily seen the original movie. They just have like the trope of the Stepford Wives, but they don't necessarily know like the ins and outs of the movie.
Like people might see Nicole Kidman's face.
Yeah.
Because maybe they didn't see the new movie, but they saw like commercials and they saw the poster for it.
Yeah.
You know? Because you remember the poster for the new one, right?
Kind of.
It's just Nicole Kidman's giant face.
Yeah.
And her giant forehead.
But
surrounded by blonde hair.
Yeah. But I think there's this understanding in the culture. The Stepford Wives are robots. Like they made the ladies into robots to do the housework.
Yeah.
Like that is the understanding, I think.
Or something. I would say the robot thing is kind of a little more specific.
Yeah.
It's more about conformity.
Yeah. Like you would call someone who is like really vapid, oh, she's a Stepford wife.
Right.
You know, or something like this. I don't know. I do people say that? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever called anyone a Stepford wife.
I think people have.
We thought that it would be funny to make a list of things like over the course of the week that I did that a Stepford wife would never do. I could think of a few.
Yeah. Lay it on me, sister.
I mean, I've asked you to change a diaper multiple times.
Yeah.
Poopy diapers.
Yep.
Side note, our kid has started doing this funny thing where like he likes to do a poop like right before bath time. And so then it's a question of like, how close to bath time is it? how long do we let him have a poopy diaper? Within 15
I think it's 15 minutes.
within 15 minutes.
If it's going to be 15 minutes before he's getting in the bath, we're going to put a clean diaper on him
Yeah.
and know that we're just going to take it right off. But if it's within 15 minutes, I'll let him have a poopy diaper for 15 minutes before he gets in the bath.
And then if it's within like 5 minutes, it's like a question of like, okay, do we just let him run around naked? What's the most time that will allow him to be naked because he might pee on stuff? And I feel like that time is less.
Well, yeah, that time's a lot less. I'm at the point right now where I would prefer he just goes naked from the changing table to the bath.
Which he does do.
His bedroom is right next to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So it's very cute when he goes, because he also knows he takes his clothes to the laundry. He likes putting them in the laundry in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
So from your experience, I imagine you just have this naked little gremlin running into the bathroom going, laundry,
bath.
And he just throws his shorts in the laundry and then gets in the bath.
Yeah. Although yesterday, do you remember? This was a big first because you went into his room to say it's bath time and he said, no bath, diaper. And you were like, no diaper, it's bath time. And he was like, no bath, diaper. And you looked in his diaper and he had pooped.
Yeah.
So he like had some understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
Yeah. I just love that you seem to really understand that the child is the most important thing and he needs to be the focus. He needs to be the focal point of your life. And I really appreciate that you're putting him above all of your own wants and desires.
You know, the funny thing is, like the Stepford
Much
Wives.
like a Stepford wife.
The funny thing is, though, I would say the Stepford Wives are not great mothers. Like I don't see the Stepford Wives spending a lot of time with their kids. They spend a lot of time doing housework and a lot of time having sex with their husbands.
This is where the plan kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
I think because I do want to talk about the book. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about the story. We're going to talk about the implications, and I really want to get into how this plan can't succeed long term.
Yeah.
And why I think that's a feature, not a bug of
Yeah.
the storytelling. Like, I don't think that's a hole in the plot. I think that's an essential part of the plot.
Yeah.
For me. And you're getting to it right there. I mean, that's one of the issues is, of course, they are terrible mothers.
Yeah. Like I spend way more time with my kid than a Stepford wife.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't spend any time with her kids.
Right.
They've always got babysitters and they're in school. Well, and this was another thing that I pointed out. Again, we're going to actually talk about the plot in a second. But like, not even a failure of logic, because I don't think it's necessary to think about this in order to enjoy this book and these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, enjoy one of the movies. Say they have this technology that they can make women into robots.
Mm-hmm.
These women they're still like very much robots. They're not necessarily they're not necessarily like indistinguishable from human beings. And so like none of the Stepford wives are pregnant, for example.
Right.
Like the robot wives can't have babies. So it's like everyone would have to come to this town at a very, very specific point in their lives where their kids are old enough to like be in school all day and not need as much from their mother. Like they're certainly not breastfeeding either,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, so everyone in Stepford is apparently like past that point in their lives. There's no like really little kids in Stepford. So again, like not like a failure of logic, but just like one of those things when you start thinking about it, it's like, whoa, how's that supposed to work?
And I think that can be the logic of the characters.
Yeah.
Like that can be part of the plan. I don't think that's a fault on Ira Levin's part.
Yeah. Well, so should we talk about this book real quick?
Let me do a back of the book.
Yeah, go for it.
For Joanna, her husband Walter, and their children, the move to beautiful Stepford seems almost too good to be true. It is. For behind the town's idyllic facade lies a terrible secret, a secret so shattering that no one who encounters it will ever be the same. At once a masterpiece of psychological suspense and a savage commentary on a media-driven society that values the pursuit of youth and beauty at all costs, The Stepford Wives is a novel so frightening in its final implications that the title itself has earned a place in the American lexicon.
There it is. That's what we were just talking about.
I would say that's there. The pursuit of youth and beauty at all costs?
No, that's not it at all.
I feel like that makes an implication that they want this?
Yeah.
Because it keeps them beautiful? Like the wives want this?
I mean, I guess the men's pursuit of youth and beauty in their wives.
Sure.
But it's not even like youthfulness. Like it's more sexiness. You know what I mean?
They
Like
want them to be MILFs.
Yeah.
Like all of the husbands want MILFs.
they're all definitely in their 30s and 40s. Like no one's I think like none of them are like, wow, she looked really young. They don't talk about that really at all. They talk about how sexy the women are and how like nothing the men are. It's a little bit of a weird plot summary, but I'll give it that.
Mhm.
Ira Levin, I just wanted to mention also, so he wrote this book. He
Yep.
also wrote Rosemary's Baby.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm super impressed. I don't know anything about Ira Levin.
You know that he wrote Rosemary's
I
Baby.
know that he
and
wrote Rosemary's Baby.
He also wrote The Boys from Brazil.
Yeah.
And Death Trap.
Yeah, which is so interesting. Like these things have a certain amount in common.
Mhm.
Like they're sort of like horror, sci-fi, almost like medical right?
horror.
Medical horror,
Yeah.
right? Because Boys from Brazil is about cloning.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and if it was only about cloning, that would be one thing.
yeah, well, I don't know much about Boys from Brazil.
Oh, well, you know who they're all clones
They're
of.
clones of Hitler. Well, I know
Yeah.
that from Archer.
Yeah.
I know.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, but Krieger is a boy from Brazil.
I do remember that.
You know, I'm familiar with Rosemary's Baby.
Mhm.
I've seen the movie. I think I've actually read the book like a long time ago, like maybe
Yeah.
in high school. And I'd seen this before, and I don't remember if I'd read it before. But like,
And before anybody asks, it is unlikely that we are going to do an episode where we have to watch a Roman Polanski movie.
no, we it's a
Just
a
in
hard
case,
no.
Just in case anyone suggests it.
Yeah, actually, kind of a regret I have is we can never do Oliver Twist
Why can't we do Oliver Twist?
because Polanski directed one of the versions.
We can just skip that one.
We could skip it. We'll talk about we'll talk about it off air. Yeah, no, I won't do a Polanski movie. Because of the situation.
Macbeth is what bums me out
Yeah.
with him because I want to do Macbeth.
Yep.
And that one's really good. But
Sorry.
yeah, I know. No, it's fine.
Yep. So like we've had these conversations before about these like dude writers from the 70s and like how terrible they all are. Like, you know, your Peter Benchleys, your Mario Puzos, your whoever wrote
The Taking of Pelham
Taking
1, 2,
Pelham
3,
1, 2,
but
3.
under a suit. I don't remember his real name
Yeah.
or his pseudonym.
But this I felt was an exception. And again, I don't know much about Ira Levin or like his life or background other than he's got a very Jewish sounding name, so I assume he's from New York.
Let's make assumptions.
Let's make
It's fine.
assumptions. Well, Rosemary's Baby is a very New York.
Mhm.
And also the Stepford Wives too. It's like all very like New York East Coast centric. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that the way that he has of getting into a woman's head and a woman's psyche and this sort of like specifically I'm going to say specifically female or at least specifically reproductive body horror.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm talking about Rosemary's Baby a little bit, but like the links between this sort of body horror of like something is taking over my body.
Yeah.
Something is taking over me, something is inside me, something is becoming me that I don't want and is being enforced on me from outside, and everyone is gaslighting me and telling me it's normal, and I know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
That particularly that gaslighting experience, I think is in both Rosemary's Baby and Stepford Wives. And, you know, as someone who's been pregnant, I can tell you, like, the body horror of that experience is, like, not nothing. Never mind being pregnant with, like, Satan's child or whatever it was.
Which isn't Rosemary's Baby.
Which isn't Rosemary's
were
Baby. I was not.
We assume.
We assume. I mean, he's pretty cute. I feel like if he was Satan's child, we would have heard about it by now. Like, knock wood.
Yeah.
But, like, this sort of feeling of, like, I feel like something's wrong. Everyone is telling me it's fine. My husband, who I love, is telling me it's fine. He's telling me that I'm the crazy one. And yet there are all of these outside forces literally conspiring against me to harm me that I've suspected and everyone's telling me isn't happening.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Just like related to one aspect of that, because there's a lot of the stuff I can't really talk to, but one of the things I can talk to is being the husband, as I am your husband.
Right.
I feel like part of the horror is that because I've said to you many times, like you when you were reading this book, you wouldn't turn me into a Stepford wife, would you?
Yeah.
And my answer every single time has been, of course not. But I feel like the horror of it is her husband Walter
Would also say,
of course not,
Yeah.
and she would believe him.
Right.
And yet he does.
Yes.
So I feel like that's part of the horror as well, is that even though you love me and even though I'm telling you everything's going to be okay, at the end of the day, you can't trust even me.
Right. And that's sort of the point of the book.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that was sort of what was like was like pushing me towards some paranoia while I was reading the book, because I did keep asking you, like, you wouldn't turn me into a Stepford wife, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, no, of course not, wink. And I was like, that's not helping even a little.
Did I do that?
You did it one time and I told
One
you
time.
not to do it again.
And I never did it again.
That's fair. Okay. So the plot of the book. We have Joanna and Walter. They are a married couple. She is a photographer. Is he a lawyer in the book? I know he's a lawyer in the movie.
No, he's a lawyer in the
He's a
book,
lawyer
from
in
what
the
I
book.
remember, yeah.
It doesn't really matter
I
what
think
his
so.
job is.
He's got a big important job that means he needs to go to the city a
He
lot.
needs to go to the city a lot. So they're moving out of the city. They live in Manhattan. They've got these 2 kids. They are moving to this town called Stepford in Connecticut. And it's like a commuter town in Connecticut. Like all the men commute to work. All the kids go to in the city. All the kids go to school. All the wives sit at home and presumably
Be robots.
be robots. And so they move to this town. And she's like, a very free-spirited city woman. And, the lady comes and says like, oh, I write for the newspaper. I do a profile on all the new ladies in town. Like, can you tell me like what you're interested in? And she says, oh, well, I'm interested in photography and women's liberation. And the woman's like, oh.
Did you feel at any point, by the way, that Ira Levin was... I don't feel like he was ever condescending about like women's lib.
No, I don't think so, because he wasn't like using it to make fun of anyone. I
No.
didn't think. She was like, this is something I'm into. It's an interest I have. I've been to like women's lib groups, in the city. Like it was a thing in the 70s.
Yeah, like I think he presents it as a valid thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that maybe not every one of these like dude authors from the 70s you were talking about, I don't know that they all would have presented like the idea of feminism as a valid pursuit.
I don't think they would have had a character be into women's liberation and have us be very sympathetic to that character and treat her wants and needs very seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the most negative thing I have to say about it is like it's sort of presented as a hobby, just the same as photography is a hobby.
Yeah, well, but I feel like that was part of it too, because one of the problems she had was that she was never really taken seriously.
Yeah.
And she struggled. So she was struggling as like a woman in photography.
Yeah, like she wanted to be a professional photographer, but like she seemed like she had some like imposter syndrome and she wasn't being taken seriously, and she was like trying to actually sell her photographs.
Yeah,
right?
and the thing we learn is that, I mean, I think part of the subtext is that if this is a man who is willing to turn his wife into a robot, he probably was willing before that to subtly sabotage her.
Yeah, I mean, I can picture Walter saying like, well, this is I'm so glad like you have something to occupy your time, but like obviously this isn't like anything serious, or like picking faults and like things that she was proud of or things like that. This is not textual. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna get into like text and subtext a lot, I think, in these.
So they move to this town, and she notices right away that like all the women are really, really hot, and the men are just kind of schlubby or nothing.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
This definitely does the thing where I could tell it was a guy writing it because... Okay, I'm not saying there are no women out there that are obsessed with other women's breasts.
No,
But
I've never heard what. I have no idea what you're talking about.
But that's, I feel like in this one, it's kind of taken as read that women are all obsessed with other women's breasts.
Like they notice other women's breasts, but like in a like I'm not a YouTube person. Like I notice other women's breasts, but not in a way. This is more like, oh wow, she looked great. I am jealous of how she looks.
But it's only breasts.
Yes.
It's like the thing she notices about all these women. It's always she looked beautiful, her hair was amazing, and her tits were fantastic.
Right.
It's never
It's like,
anything else.
Yeah. Like I would never come home and say like I met so and so. Wow, she had fantastic tits. Like I would never describe anybody that way. Like that would be I would never do that.
That jumped out at me as being a little like men writing women.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I'm glad to hear the things you're saying, because the impression I got reading the book was that the female characters were well written.
Yes.
It seemed to me that he did a good job, but I am nowhere near the the final word on that. It was just a thought that I had, but you might be in a better position to confirm that.
Yeah. So she has this information about her published in the local paper, and there's one person who's like, oh, another lady who's from New York who's into women's lib. I must go seek this person out.
Well, that's not what she sounds like.
So she meets,
I need to go find this lady. I need to seek her out.
I mean, I pictured her as Fran Drescher, honestly, like a young Fran Drescher, Bobby.
Yeah, I did not picture her as Fran Drescher at all. I pictured it much more as like a plump little Jew.
Yeah. So anyway, she makes a Jewish friend, the one Jewish person in town, and she likes her because like her house is
What's her name?
Bobby Markow.
Mm-hmm.
And she likes,
they changed it because it was Markowitz, right?
Well, in the book she says, "My name's Bobby Markow. We used to be Markowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be Shithouse."
You changed it.
Change it
to Latrine?
But by way of introducing herself, right? She's
Yep.
like, hi, I am the Jewish person in town. And they like each other because like Bobby's kitchen is always a mess, and like she's kind of like all over the place, and she's not perfect like all the other women in Stepford. And so they have this idea like that they're gonna, they're friends and they like do their shopping together, whatever, but they also want to like start like a women's group, because the other thing we learn about this town is there's this men's association,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really big deal in the town. And like all the men in town go there every night. And Joanna's like, well, what do they do? Like every night, what do they do? And it's like, oh, they just like
Same thing they do every night.
same thing. Yeah, they try to take over the world. They just like drink whiskey and like smoke cigars and like play pool and like tell dirty stories or whatever. Like and they do these things to like try to help the town. Like they plan like civic events.
Well, it's like there were all kinds of other organizations, but everything has just kind of been folded into the Men's Association over the years.
Yeah, the Men's Association. And I guess here's my first question, right? Like, I don't know, because to me in 2021, it seems utterly bizarre that there's like you go to your club every night. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like they literally say every night. Like the men and I was describing this to you and saying like how horrible I would find it. It's like, okay, you commute into the city, you come home in the evening, you have your dinner that I've spent the day preparing for you. You kiss the children on the head before bedtime. You spend 20 minutes with your children. The children go to bed. It's now what? 7:30 and you go to your club for 3 hours and we spend no time together.
Mhm.
Like that's
Sounds great.
that's
Sounds amazing.
it's everyone's lives in this town. And I guess I don't know how weird that was in 1975, right?
72 was the book.
72. I don't know if that was old fashioned but not crazy, or if it was crazy then.
I think it's one of those. It brings up the question of how does this book age? Because I think a lot of this book ages really, really well.
Yeah.
One thing I think that comes up a lot is just as the idea of like loss of autonomy is more in pop culture than it ever has been. The idea that like it would take her a while to figure out that all the women are robots
Yeah.
is not really how things would work anymore, because now we're, I think, savvier as an audience.
Yeah.
So it's kind of quaint to read it and go, like, okay, so there's all these guys, and they're all part of the Men's Association, and the thing you find out over the course of the book is that they all, again, this is all subtext, it's never explicitly stated, but it's pretty clear that all the men have different roles in the development and creation of the robots.
Right.
The main guy is this guy named Diz, because he used to work at Disney making the animatronics.
Right.
They talk about how realistic the presidents are, which
They're not.
is not true even a little, but like for the purposes of the fiction, we'll go along with it. There's a guy who is he's a fashion illustrator, and he's the one who comes up with the look for all these ladies. He makes it so they can have the most beautiful version of their wives. He doesn't turn them into new people. He just makes them the prettiest version of themselves.
Yeah.
But there's this one guy whose whole thing is language, and what he does is he has all the women help him with a study he's doing, an experiment he's doing, and it's essentially just them reading the dictionary into a tape recorder. And the thing is, in 2021, like, oh, that's how you create a synthetic voice.
Right. That's how you train an AI voice, right?
But like how quaint in 1972 that someone might not have jumped to that immediately.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to assume that people were dumb, but like I could assume it took like a few pages longer. You know,
Yeah.
like it's one of those things where like reading it now, I read it and immediately go, oh, they're robots.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, because I had no. This is something we didn't really talk about at the beginning. Beyond the idea that like Stepford wife in quotes is just kind of this loss of autonomy, and you're turning into this like perfect housewife.
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about them because I never saw the movies and I never read the book.
Right.
So it was fun to read the book and go like, for a while, like, are they brainwashed? Are they conditioned? Oh no, they're robots.
They're robots.
They're robots. Okay,
Yeah,
they're robots.
they're robots.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to kind of quickly finish off the plot, there's a third non-robot woman. By the way, there's like 6 people in this town. You know, like
Yeah.
are they really all robots? Like how many hundreds of people would this actually realistically be?
There's only like 4 women we meet that are wives that are not robots.
Yeah.
Because it's Joanna and her friend Bobby. They meet Charmaine,
Yeah.
who I assume you're going to talk about.
Charmaine, yep.
And like Charmaine is the first who gets turned into a Stepford wife. Then Bobby gets turned into a Stepford wife, and then we also meet Ruth Ann,
Yes.
who is the new black woman in town.
Black woman in town.
And she ends the book not having been turned into a robot.
Yeah.
But like her time is coming.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like Joanna gets turned into a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Charmaine is like, she's like sexy, but not in like a Stepford Wives way, in like sort of a true trophy wife way.
Picture like, I don't know, Ginger from Gilligan's Island or something like that.
There you go. And she just loves to like dress up sexy and play tennis all day, but she doesn't spend very much time cleaning the house, which is not okay. And so as you say, like the method for this is always like, oh, my husband invited me away on this like romantic weekend. You know, can you keep the kids? We're gonna like rediscover ourselves and like bone and go to the Plaza Hotel or whatever to do this, an inn in Vermont or whatever. And they come back a robot. And so Charmaine turns into a robot, and Joanna's like, this is really weird. Like, she's totally changed. Like, she's doing housework and talking about chores. Like, this isn't
She had her own tennis court that she loved so much,
Yeah.
and she's immediately getting plowed over.
She had it
Plowed under. Bulldozed.
for her husband. I don't know. I forget what it was that he wants instead.
Well, he wants a wife that doesn't play tennis.
Well, right. But like, she's replacing it with something for him. It
Nah.
does not matter.
Putting green or
Yeah.
something like that.
And so like Bobby is convinced that there's like something in the water, and she's like going around like trying to get their water tested and like writing to like the EPA and all this stuff. And then
And EP's like, your water's fine. Fuck off.
yeah, it's fine. And then she gets turned, and then Joanna knows something's really wrong.
Mhm.
And she's talking to Walter, and she's like, Walter, like, you don't understand. Like, her house is clean. Like, I went over there and everything's perfect. And Walter's like, her house was a shithole. Like, would it kill you to spend a little more time at home? And Joanna's like, oh, holy shit, something's terribly wrong here. There's this whole big, like, very tense scene where she's kind of being chased down by these guys, and like there's really nowhere for her to go. Oh, and she says she wants to move. She keeps saying, I want to move, like I don't want to live here anymore. And he's like, sure, but like I want you to see a shrink because you're clearly crazy, and like how can I be sure that like when we move you're not going to want to move again in 3 months or something like that. And so she's willing to do that, but then like they're basically like trying to kill time until like her robot is ready. And Joanna has figured out it takes about like 3 or 4 months before you get turned. And so basically the book ends with these guys like chasing her down, and
they kind of all close in on her, and then it ends.
And we don't know what happens.
And then we cut to the supermarket
with Ruth Ann.
All the women are saying hello to each other.
Yeah, hello.
And Ruth Ann goes up to Joanna, and Joanna turns around and goes, hello, Ruth Ann, how are you?
Yeah.
Or something to that effect.
And Ruth Ann's
so
like, I'm
we as an
okay.
audience are like, fuck,
Yeah.
Ruth Ann, get the fuck out.
Yeah. Ruth Ann, again, like the only black family in town.
Can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah, of course.
I want to be very careful about this next section because I'm not the person to talk about this. And I guess I'm stating some of this more as a question than as a statement. Having been raised on like race in media through like the 90s, the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, where sensitivity was really performative. Not that it isn't performative now, but I feel like it was much more performative at the time. And it was very, the idea of like, I'm colorblind, like that whole idea.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very, very big in the 90s.
Like we don't see color, which is not the modern way of speaking.
Exactly. And I think one of the interesting things is that now, like in the modern day, in the modern conversation, we're really coming around to like, no, when you ignore color, like you're ignoring what's right. I'm quoting Anti-Racist Baby now, which is a fantastic children's book. But like when you ignore color, like you're ignoring what's right in front of you.
Yeah.
Like color is a thing. It doesn't say anything about the worth of the person or the abilities of the person.
Yes.
But color is real.
But as Anti-Racist Baby points out, race is a social construct.
Yes.
But like the color of your skin is not not a social construct. You are the literal color that you are.
Yeah. So, but having spent so many years in the media of like the 90s and the early 2000s, reading this book felt a little weird to me because it's very much like, here's the black family. She is a black woman. She has a picture of a black man.
Yes.
That kind of thing. And it's very blunt. So it felt a little icky at first. But then I realized, like, reading it, no value judgments are being made about these people. It's just, he's illustrating them as characters.
Yeah.
It does have the thing where a person of color is described as black, but a person who is white is not.
Yeah.
But then I also think that maybe it's kind of implicit in this very story.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things about this is that this town is very white.
Right.
And you can kind of take that as read.
Right. And the character is very sympathetic and essentially talks about microaggression. Right. They have this very frank conversation where she says to Joanna, like, the women are kind of unfriendly to me, and I didn't know if they were like this to everyone or if it's because I'm black. And Joanna was kind of like, no, I don't think it's because you're black, but
they're like this to everyone.
They're like this to everyone, but like not in a way that's like, you're being so sensitive. Why do you make everything about race? She genuinely thinks about it. She's like, no, I don't think so. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And Joanna has moments throughout the book too, like maybe not that many of them, but she does have these moments where she's like, I'm a fake liberal.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. Like it's very, there definitely is talk about like what it means to actually like walk the walk and
Yeah.
not just talk the talk but walk the walk of
Yeah.
being like a progressive person.
Like you kind of get the sense that Joanna is actually very excited to have her first black friend, like in that kind of
in this
thing.
town
In this town
yeah.
especially, yeah. And Ruth Ann, I mean the thing that, and Joanna's actually heard of her because she's a children's book author and an illustrator, and she's like, oh, I have your so and so, like, oh, I have your books at home, we love them. Again, it's like this woman has moved to the town, she's different from everybody else, and she also has this career, she has this life outside of her, her husband and her kids. And like that's the thing that they don't like, right? It's not like being black is almost a red herring. It's nothing to do with her being black. It's the fact that she's like successful and talented in her own right. Like they can't have that, like not from anyone. And as you say, the book should, she almost becomes kind of the main character after Joanna gets turned, because you have the sense that like they're coming for her. She thinks something very weird is going on.
Yeah,
and, like, they're coming for her too.
You as a reader, you have your surrogate the entire time. Joanna is your surrogate, but then the second you know that she's a robot, like I feel like my empathy was like, what do I do? What do I do? Daddy, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm going to jump to this character.
Yeah.
And I immediately jump to Ruth Ann because she's the closest thing now I have to a main character.
Like, get out.
Right? But it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
Because the book ends at that point.
Yeah.
It's a quick read. It's a super fun read. I expected something that was going to be interesting, but I got something that was like interesting and fun and a page turner and was just great.
I just appreciated
it.
A book from the 70s written by a man that like the women were sympathetic and intelligent.
Yeah.
Like I was very impressed with Ira Levin, I have to say, as an author.
And the horror aspect is that they might lose the things that make them intelligent and interesting.
Yeah. Like the horror is I might get turned into this, like there is no sympathy for like, oh, maybe it would be better to like clean my house a little more or something like that. It's like, no, I'm a person. Like I get to do people things.
And it's one of these things too where like I didn't find that the book was critical of men in general.
Yeah,
but
just these men.
It was very critical of this type of man.
Yeah.
Which I found it specific and interesting.
Yeah, and it the type of man that would want to move to this town and have a robot wife. I mean, I don't know that that's the majority of men. I hope it's not. Do you think it's? I mean, let me ask you this: like you have the privilege of having.
I don't hang out with those guys.
I know that you don't, but like you have inhabited a space that I literally can never inhabit, which isn't like an all male conversation, right? It's like Schrodinger's cat. Like me being there, like automatically changes the conversation. In your experience, what percentage of I'm going to say like, straight cis men, let's say,
sure,
would be at least tempted by the idea of having a robot wife instead of a people wife?
A number.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But bottom line, I can't answer your question because there's too many men in the world that I do not know. And I don't know how many of them are utter monsters.
Yeah.
Can we bring it back to the book for a second?
Yes.
Because I think this is a good way to kind of transition into the movie a little bit, because one of the things I really enjoyed in the book is I feel like this has come up a few times on the show recently, this idea of how are you using ambiguity? Like, is it ambiguity for ambiguity's sake? Are you not being clear about using ambiguity? Is it like focused ambiguity? And this is one of those ones where I felt like it was really, really focused ambiguity.
Yeah.
Because you are led to assume that they are robots. But here's one thing you are absolutely not told explicitly by the end of the book. What happens to the wives?
I mean, strong implication.
Well, but that's the thing. It's only implications.
Right.
It's implications that they are no longer with us.
Strong implication they are murdered.
Right. But it's just we
don't know.
It's implications. It's totally ambiguous what happens, and that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
That's part of the horror of it. Is we don't know what happens.
And even if the implication is that they're murdered, like, are they literally murdered and thrown in a ditch? Are they taking their bodies and adding robot parts, or are they literally murdering them and have like a full like stand-in like android to come in and take their place?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And we could talk about it, but
it doesn't matter, really.
One of the things I enjoy about the book is that if you want to answer those questions, now you're getting into the realm of fan fiction.
Right.
Because the book is pretty clear that like that stuff is part of the story. Not knowing those things is part of the horror.
Yeah.
So if you're going to adapt it, you kind of have to make a decision about what you're going to do. And I'll be honest, a lot of the time that I spent thinking about adapting it, like how could it be adapted, I feel like you can go in one of two directions. Like one direction is keep things ambiguous. And another direction is, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to write a whole new third act. And in this one, Ruth Ann becomes the hero, and she figures out exactly what's going on, and she blows up all their plans and burns the Men's Association to the ground, and all the guys get murdered by their robot wives.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell that, and I don't think The Stepford Wives is one of these, as a novel, I don't think it's one of these, like, monuments of human artistic achievement
Yeah.
that it's above being altered in an adaptation.
Yeah.
Like if you can tell a story that's related to it and you want to tell what happens afterwards, I think that's valid.
Yeah.
I don't see that as being invalid.
Well, we talked about this a little bit, but there's like all these kind of weird sequels that we didn't watch. But like, I feel like that all stems out of this desire to like, no, like this ended in a really unfair way. We gotta fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Like we gotta, this sort of human desire to like to be like, well, what happened next? What happened? Like, surely it can't end just like that. That's terrible.
Yeah. But like it could end there.
Yeah.
And I think a very valid version of it is that it does end there. And the other trap, and we brought this up before, is that if you're going to adapt it and you want to keep going, you're going to be put in a position where you're going to need to answer a lot of questions that the book doesn't answer.
Yeah.
And this is what brings us back to their plan. One of the things I love in my interpretation of it is that this is actually not a good plan. This is a bad plan. And in my mind, of course it's going to blow up in their faces at some point, because someone's gonna find out. They're gonna do this to too many people. Someone's gonna be driving through the town and actually accidentally hit one of these women, and she's gonna break apart into 4 pieces.
Yeah, some man is gonna come to the town that likes his wife, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then he'll be like, guys, I'm gonna call the police. You know what I mean?
It's not the police in Stepford,
Not
though.
the police in Stepford. God forbid, I'm gonna call the FBI or whatever. I don't know. The women's police
But
or
what
something.
I'm saying is, one of the things I love about it is that the plan is very selfish and very self-centered.
Yeah.
The very reason they're doing it is because they are utterly selfish and utterly self-centered. So, of course, that's one of the reasons why the plan is probably going to fall apart at some point and blow up in these dumb fuckers' faces. And I'd love to see that. And the fact that I'd love to see it explains to me why someone would write a sequel.
Right.
Or make a sequel
that's
where
kinda what I'm saying.
that involves that happening.
Yeah.
But to me that's one of the most fun things about their plan is that it's imperfect and it's going to fall apart at some point.
Do you want to talk about the movies?
Let's talk about that. So it was going to be made a little bit sooner, but there was a little bit of a delay. So it was 1975 when the original Stepford Wives movie came out. It was directed by Brian Forbes, who was kind of a jack of all trades. He was an actor and a writer and a producer. I feel like he kind of made up for not having anything really, really big by just doing a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was written by William Goldman.
Yeah, and I know a little bit about this because he writes about it in Adventures in the Screen Trade. Like what the backstory of like doing this movie was.
Like from what I was reading about it, he didn't love it.
Yeah.
It sounds like they made a lot of changes to his script while they were making it that he wasn't happy with.
William Goldman would say that about literally every script except The Princess Bride.
Right? Exactly.
Like he's always dissatisfied with the changes they made to a script.
Like William Goldman, it's not one of these things. Like he's a really, really good writer.
Yeah.
I probably would even say he's a great writer. But I think one of the central aspects of William Goldman is that he is not as good a writer as he thinks he is because he thinks he's the greatest writer of all time.
Well, he surely thinks he understands women very well.
That's a big thing. Like, it was actually kind of weird going from the book to the movie where during the book, I'm like, I feel like Ira Levin gets women, gets most women, gets this type of woman. I think William Goldman does a bit, but it's clear he thinks he does more than he actually does.
There were. I didn't really exactly write it down, but there were a couple weird conversations that happened that I was like, no one would say that. No one would ever say that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Please continue.
There's a whole lot of interesting people in this. Catherine Ross as Joanna. Catherine Ross from The Graduate, among other things. She's well, we'll get to that in a second. Paula Prentice as Bobby Markow, who is not who I pictured for this. Apparently, they had to recast a few weeks into shooting. I forget off the top of my head who was playing Bobby beforehand, but it doesn't matter because they ended up not playing Bobby. So it's Paula Prentice, Peter Masterson as Walter, Tina Louise as Charmaine, who played Ginger on Gilligan's Island. What'd you think of this movie?
This movie was so interesting because it was very close to the book in a lot of ways, but there were some subtle changes. Again, I think like maybe coming down to like, it was a little bit more conventional than the book, I think. I don't know. Like, I think maybe they needed a little bit more of an in for male viewers. Do you think?
I think so. I think so. There's a lot more clarity here than there
Yeah.
was in the novel.
It's much more clear what's going on.
So, like, here's one thing, for example, that is not clear in the book that is absolutely, to me, was absolutely clear in the movie. Walter,
Yeah.
in the book, is it clear whether he moved them to Stepford knowing that his wife was going to get turned into a robot, or did he find out about it after they moved and decided, yes, I will do this?
Yeah, I don't think it's clear, but I think the implication in the book is he only found out about it after.
Right? But we don't know because
Yeah.
it's not stated explicitly. In the movie, it's not stated explicitly, but there are a lot of indications that Walter definitely knew before they moved to Stepford.
Yeah, and then I think by the end you really think he already knew.
Well,
because we do see inside the men's club and see some of their conversation. No, we don't in this one, do we? We only do in the newest
in
one.
the new one, yeah. Because
Yeah.
in this one, though, there's a thing that happens at the beginning. They've just moved to the town, and he has met the woman who lives across the street. He's met Carol Van Zant.
Yeah.
He meets her, and he's like just so amazed by her. And then later that night, he's talking to the next door neighbor, the husband.
Yeah.
And we have never seen them talk before. We know he just moved to this town, but he talks to this guy in a really familiar way, which gives you the sense that he knows him already.
Yeah.
And he says something about his wife, and he's just like, man, she looks fantastic. And it is just clear to me, knowing that the whole idea is that he's talking about her as an object.
Yeah.
Like he's talking
literally an object.
Like the line he says, he could easily have been saying it about the guy's car.
Yeah. Like, wow, you did a great job.
Right?
Making that.
Like
Yeah.
that seems clear to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's there. I feel like we definitely find out earlier on that Walter is a bastard.
Yes.
Because there's this scene, and again, like, I guess I don't know how to calibrate how terrible this is in the sense of this was 1975, because she said they're having a fight kind of early in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and she says to him, like, you always pretend to include me in our decision making, but like you've already decided. She says you said you were thinking about moving and you had already looked at this house, and then you said you thought you might find a house, and then I found out you had already put down a down payment or something like that. And I turned to you and I was like, imagine a situation where you put down a down payment on a house without telling your spouse. Like, to me, that is mind-boggling.
Like, we talked about it. If I did that to you, I feel like you would leave me.
Yeah, I mean, not only would I leave you, but like I just can't imagine a situation where that would ever happen. And I feel like that would be very strange in our modern day. Like,
certainly in the circles we run in,
yes,
it would be unheard of.
It is very normal for both spouses to have an equal say in like major financial decisions. But again, I don't know how weird that was in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the kind of thing where it's like, that is crazy and you need to leave him right away, or like, that's kind of controlling, but like, I've heard of other people doing that. You know what I mean?
I feel like it kind of taken on its own. The implication is that it on its own is not insane, but when you combine it with all of the other things she accuses him of, and combine that with him literally turning into a goddamn robot.
Right.
I feel like the picture that is painted of him is that he's not a good dude.
Yeah. Well, I kept saying to you as we watched this movie, like I kept like describing what the situation was, and if you could ever picture me doing that thing. Like there's one point where he goes out to the men's club in the evening instead of spending time with his wife, and I was like, A of all, not cool. And then he like calls her and says, oh, and the kids are in bed and she's just hanging out at home in her like pajamas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he calls her and says like, oh, by the way, I'm like bringing like 5 or 6 of the guys home because we're going to talk about this event, this like civic,
a toy drive.
Yeah, it's like civic event. And he doesn't even say like, is that okay? He's just like, we're coming home. And she's like, okay. They show up and she's like changed into a pretty dress, and she's like made them all coffee and drinks and like snacks, and they're like complaining about like the whiskey's bad or something. And I was like, imagine me putting on like a cute outfit and serving you like drinks and food with like 5 or 6 dudes that you've come home at 9 o'clock at night without telling me. And then you were like, I cannot imagine that. And then they're like about to have their meeting, and he's like, okay, is it okay if like Joanna like joins us for the meeting? And she's like, oh, okay. And sits down. And I was like, imagine after all that, you were like, here, come sit with us with this boring conversation that we're about to have, rather than like go off to your room and like watch some YouTube by yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you were like, I cannot imagine that.
This is very personal to our relationship.
Yeah, it was like, everything worse. Step by step, it could not have gotten worse. I
Yeah.
was like, I would not put on a cute dress for you. I would not serve you coffee and drinks, and I would not let these people in my house.
Yeah. But can we talk about the party scene for a second?
Yes, of course.
Because the whole party is a plot, a put on, a sham. Because the party's in the book, but I feel like it's not as explicit. That's one of the things that I was talking about before. Like, so many things in the movie are more explicit than they
Yeah.
are in the book. So one of the things in this is that she leaves the room and he immediately like turns to the guys and goes like, "What do you think? Like, what do you guys think?" Clearly, he's talking about turning her into a robot.
Yeah.
Like, they're not hiding it from each other at this point. And it's all of the guys that are there who all have like the different things they do to make the robot. So
Yeah.
the voice dude is there, and the body dude is there, and the programming dude is there, and they're all giving her a look-see to see if they can really do it, if they can turn her into a robot.
Yeah.
He goes through an initiation
Mhm.
into the men's association, and it is so heavily implied that the initiation was, this is where he made the decision to go through with it and turn her into a robot.
Yeah, because he's like sitting up at night, and she's like, "What's going on? Is everything okay?"
Yeah. Another thing in the book too is that it's implied that they are robotic.
Yeah.
But again, maybe they're brainwashed, something like that. But then as the book goes on, she finds out too many things that set off alarm bells to make you think robots.
Yeah, like the animatronic stuff. I used to work at Disneyland,
Yeah.
like all this stuff.
In the movie, there's a scene at a grocery store.
Yeah.
And two things of note happen at the grocery store. One, Walter pays their grocery store tab for a family of 4, which is $53, and he pays it with a goddamn check.
Obviously,
And
like you do.
It brought me back to my childhood in a way I did not expect.
My mom used to write checks at the grocery store. I remember that.
You remember the little
little
the little
stand.
stand
Yeah,
where you
that
write,
you write the
checks.
check, yeah.
I think they've repurposed that, and now they stuck
They stuck the credit card thing right on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
like the
that's-
little pen with like the curly thing
Yeah.
that attached it to the I know.
I would pull on it and play
Yeah.
with it before,
Yeah.
while we were
I
waiting.
used to do it all the time.
That's one thing of note that happens. But the other thing that happens is there's a little bit of a car accident out in the parking lot, and one of the Stepford Wives causes the accident, and she starts short circuiting and having a problem. And like there's a guy who works for the grocery store that's like doing bringing out bags of groceries, and he's just so scared, and he's telling everyone it wasn't my fault, and he repeats it so many times, and it's definitely a thing of like, something is going on in this town that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's really creepy, and it's not in the book. And I thought it was really effective. But that same woman, I think the way the timing works is that she is hit and is taken, quote unquote, to the hospital.
Yeah.
Even though the direction the ambulance goes is in the opposite direction of the hospital.
Yeah.
Because, of course, she's not going to the hospital. She is getting repaired because she is a robot.
Right.
Then the big party happens.
Yeah, and she's like still kind of malfunctioning.
Yeah. And she's like going through the party, repeating herself to everybody.
Like I just love this punch or some
I have to get the recipe.
I have to get the recipe.
And she repeats that about 50 times, and then they bring her away. And then they actually send her, like, they send the robot door to door the day after
To apologize.
for her behavior, just to make sure that everyone understands, no, I was drunk or on
drunk.
pills or something.
Yeah.
So just a lot of this stuff is more explicit.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's also the scene where like, so Joanna and Bobby, and this happens in the book too, is they're like trying to have like a women's club or like a consciousness raising session or something like this. They all get together, and I think in the book, like it never even happens. Like they're just like, no, I am too busy with my housework.
I am too busy with my housework.
But in this, they actually do get together. And Joanna's like, all right, well, we're going to like rap about our feelings, because that's what they did in the 70s. And no one says anything. And she's like, okay, I'll go first. Sometimes I feel like my husband doesn't love me. Like she really just like leads with this like big banger. And everyone just kind of stares at her. And then one person is like, I don't know how to get stains out of my thing. And the other woman is like, have you tried such and such stain remover? And it turns into this like crazy weird commercial.
It's like the Truman Show.
Yeah,
at that
for
point,
like
yeah.
for like some what is it, stain remover
Whatever
or something?
it is.
Does not matter. The woman wandering around at the party is like, okay, she's a robot, but this is the weirdest. Like you couldn't sit through that and think it was nothing.
Yeah, this was one of the ones that didn't work for me. Like I actually really loved most of the changes. I thought they were interesting, and I really liked the woman malfunctioning at the party, and I really liked the car accident at the grocery store.
Yeah, they were more
subtle.
subtle.
Way more subtle. This one though, just didn't do it for me, because as you say, like it's a little too unbelievable. I could see Joanna going crazy a little sooner.
Yeah.
Based on this, it still takes her a while to start figuring everything out, and this is just so overt. It just didn't work for me. Even the music sounds like it's music from like a commercial.
Yeah.
And in a movie about women being turned into robots, I thought this was was not subtle enough.
There it is.
I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, you're not crazy. I guess it's a little bit of an elephant in the room. The movie's whitewashed because Ruth Ann's not in it at all.
Ruth Ann is in it. I think so. There is a black couple at the end because the final scene is the scene in the. Well, okay, so we need to talk about the ending.
Yeah.
There is the big thing. She's running away. She thinks that her kids are being held at the men's association.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
You had a reaction to that.
I had a reaction to that, but go on.
Instead, it's a recording. It's not the kids yelling for their mommy. And so it's just Diz, and he's explaining to her what's going on. And there's this very slow kind of chase through the whole place. And then she goes into a room, and it's a perfect replica of her bedroom. And she looks over, and looking in the mirror, combing her hair, is her, but more beautiful. And
but with
also
dead eyes,
with black eyes, like black eyes, like a doll's eyes.
Oh God!
And that woman stands up and kind of twists like a nylon or something like that, as if in strangulation mode.
Yeah.
And just kind of walks past the camera towards her very slowly.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the grocery store, and it's beautiful. And all of the women are all saying hello to each other, and we see Robot Charmaine.
Yeah.
And we see Robot Bobby. Robobby. And then finally, we see Robot Joanna.
Yeah.
And it is Catherine Ross looking absolutely beautiful and clearly is a robot. But and that's the end of the movie, which is exactly like the book. And I really liked it, and I loved the staging of it, and I thought it was beautiful and heartbreaking and in all the right ways. So I dug that. But one of the things that also happens in the grocery store is there is another couple there who is a young black couple, and they're having an argument, and you hear her saying to the guy, like, I don't like this town. We need to get out of here. Something's really weird. Doesn't she even imply that they've been there like a month?
Yeah. Something like that.
You can't even really hear their dialogue. It's never like fully like front in the mix, but you know what they're talking about. He does refer to her by name.
Yeah.
It is not Ruth Ann.
Yeah.
So but it's clear that it's Ruth Ann.
Yeah.
But yeah, way reduced.
Yeah.
Like practically erased.
Yeah. And it's just a shame that like that was the one piece of plot that they chose to like really cut back on, because it is, I don't know, like obviously it's not great, and it does lend something very interesting. And
well, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So I think I get the decision, and I don't know that I 100% disagree with the decision to reduce Ruth Ann, because if I take color out of it, if I take her role as like a black character, and how interesting that is, if I remove that, you have a character who's essentially going through the exact same journey that Joanna is.
Yeah.
So if what you're looking to do is streamline your story and tighten it up, why do you have another character going through just the earlier stages of the journey we've already watched?
Sure, but then I guess why do you assume that Bobby's story, if you have Bobby and you have Ruth Ann, why keep Bobby and get rid of Ruth Ann?
Well, because Bobby was there first.
I guess that's true.
Like
that's true.
Joanna's the one who's gotten there, meets a person she likes, and then that person is turned into a robot.
Yeah.
Then we have Ruth Ann, who got there, found a person she likes, and then that person is turned into a robot. It's the same story.
Yeah.
It could be done in a more interesting way because of how she's different than Joanna.
Yeah.
But I can see why the decision was made, but it bums me out that they didn't strive to find a way to make it work, because it is interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the thing that really disappointed me was in the I wanted, there's more stuff in the 1975 version I want to talk about, but like in the 2004 version, you have Bobby's character played by Bette Midler audibly and loudly complaining like, there's no black people in this town, there's no Asian people in this town, or something words to that effect. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to do this sort of like white liberal thing of like, look at yourselves. What are you doing? But like in the book, actually there is a black family in the town. And isn't their story more interesting than someone complaining that there's not a black family in the town? Do you know what I mean? Like I find that more compelling than giving screen time to like someone whining and complaining. And again, sort of this like white liberal way that there's no black people in this town. Like, no, there were black people in the town.
Yeah.
We're just not featuring their story. We've cut them out of the movie. Why don't you put them back in the movie and then not complain that they're not there. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
But we will get to the 2004 one in a second.
Okay, so a couple more things about the 1975. This is more my personal reaction than anything else. So, okay, she's real freaked out. She's at home. She comes home. Walter's there. He's being real creepy.
Yeah.
And
Bobby has had a full-on
Bobby's
meltdown.
had a full-on meltdown.
She knows she's a robot.
Oh, because she stabs. She's like, okay, well, if you're not a robot, you'll bleed. And she takes a knife and stabs Bobby like right in the vag, like right in the crotch.
Well, as we all know, if it bleeds, we can kill it.
Yeah, so she does not bleed. So she's really freaked out. She's running. She runs home. Walter's there, and she's immediately like, "Where are my kids? I got it. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm taking my kids. I'm going." And he's like, "Your children are not here, Joanna." And it's so creepy. The interesting thing about being a mother for me is that she immediately makes this shift away from her own personal safety to where are my kids? Where are my kids? I want to see my kids. I want to see my kids right now. And he is keeping her from her children. He's like, let's just talk. Let's just talk. He won't tell her where the kids are. And she takes a poker from the fireplace and hits him in the fucking head with it and knocks him unconscious. And like, maybe he's dead. We actually don't know. She maybe killed him. And I turned to you and I said, what did I say?
Something to the effect of, if I kept you from Calvin, you'd do the same thing to me in a heartbeat.
Yes, that is effectively what I said. I would hit you with the poker and I would kill you if you ever tried to keep me from Calvin.
Yeah.
Which, let us not take that as an actual threat of violence, but more my attachment.
It's good information for me to have.
It's good information for you to have. I would straight up murder. So anyway, so then she goes to he mutters to her, like in his dying breath, they're at the men's association.
I think he comes back.
I'm not sure we see him again.
The implication, if Joanna's walking around as a robot in this store, like, of course her husband is alive, because what would be the point of having a robot wife?
I mean, maybe someone else took her. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I think he's alive.
Okay,
like
he may be alive.
Yeah.
So anyway, it does not matter. So she goes to the men's association, which is this big, like, haunted freaking house, and
haunted by robots.
And so she goes in, and she's like, where are you? Where are you? You know, where are my kids? Where are my kids? And she hears this little voice going, "Mommy, mommy." And you turned to me and said, I mean, she'd better get out of there and save herself, because they're not after the kids. They have no intention of harming the children. And I said, I don't care if they're turning me into if I know that someone in the next room is turning me into a robot. If my kid is screaming, "Mommy, mommy," I'm going into the room.
I'm just saying, you put your mask on before you put their mask on.
Yeah. Well, I think she still had the poker even at that point.
It's easy for me to say these things because this is not a real situation we would ever find ourselves in.
I'm telling you, if he's saying "Mommy, mommy," I'm going into the room. I don't care what's in the room.
That's fair.
So she does go into the room. It is a tape recording, as we sort of knew it would be. And as you say, they're preying on her instincts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know she's not going to go if they hear "Mommy, mommy." If she hears "Mommy, mommy,"
but
so
she meets Diz, and
she meets Diz, and strong implication she's strangled by the robot.
Can I talk about one really good line that I think William Goldman probably wrote?
Yeah.
She just stares at him, and she just goes, "Why?" And he just goes, "Because we can."
Yeah.
And you know what? I feel like if what you're looking to do is explain why these guys did this thing, like that's a pretty clear explanation in 3 words that tracks pretty heavily with what they're doing.
There's a good line too that came out of the original book that we were like, William Goldman looked at that and was like, I can't improve on that.
What was it?
She says, "Why do they call you Diz?" And he says, "I used to work at Disneyland." And she kind of laughs, and he's like, "Do you not?
Oh, yeah,
you don't believe me?" And she goes, "No, I don't believe that." And he says, "Why don't you believe it?" And she says, "Because you don't seem like someone who enjoys making people happy."
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great line.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this movie, like, a critical reaction was mixed. It made a good amount of money. It was one of those ones that kind of like became a classic years later. Like, it took years for it to become a classic.
Well, it went into the culture, didn't it?
Yeah. But like, it's good. Like, it's totally worth watching.
Yeah.
I do think I'm going to go ahead and say not all of the acting is fantastic.
No.
It's unfortunate that a lot of the leads, I think, are not amazing and super believable in this movie. But it still is like a fun movie.
It was really good.
Mm-hmm.
It was very suspenseful. I mean, I found the book the book is really, really short. Like, it's more like a novella.
Yeah.
But like the second half, I kept having to like pick it up and put it down because I was so stressed out about what was about to happen. I couldn't bear it. And I don't know. I guess the movie was like a little bit easier to watch than the book was to read, just because I knew it was going to happen, and it was all sketched out a little earlier so it wasn't quite so like stressful at the end and
Yeah.
so scary.
I felt like I was watching a different version of the story
Yeah.
because so much of it was more explicit.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I had this thing in my mind, and again, I think this goes back to people's desire to like kind of rewrite the ending and make it more positive.
Mhm.
And I think it's a good comment on how much we come to care about this character and like want her to be okay, and how much we hate these fucking dudes. Because I had this idea for like a final scene, like after you have the scene in the supermarket with all the robots walking around,
Mhm.
is we just cut to Joanna driving down the highway in a convertible with her hair blowing in the wind, happy, like with her two kids in the back seat. Like
Yeah.
she got out and let her husband keep the robot. That's what he want. Like why why can't we have that ending? You know what I mean? And you were like, yeah, but that's what makes it horror. Like it ends badly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like we were talking recently about the Shawshank Redemption and how it just ends in the way that you want it to end, which is like these two guys got out and they got to Mexico and they're happy now.
Yeah.
Like, and you had said like, you know, there's nothing wrong sometimes with letting the audience get what they want. And that was what I wanted. I wanted to see her happy.
Mhm.
And it seems that was not to be.
Horror movies end badly.
Horror
and
movies end badly.
That's one of the things that makes it happen.
All right, 2004.
Well, 1980, there was Revenge of the Stepford Wives, which we watched a few minutes of at the end. And it's one of these things where, like, in this version, the women aren't, it's years later, a few years later, the women are not robots. They've all been conditioned and they are on drugs.
And one of them is Marge Simpson.
And her husband is Don Johnson.
Good.
And in this one, by the end, all of the women are like freed of their conditioning and they straight up murder Diz.
Yeah.
And it feels like fan fiction.
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of thing someone would want to see after reading the book. So it makes it feel kind of hollow to me. Then in 1987, there was the Stepford Children, which goes along with the whole idea of like, how deep does their plan go? What do they do to the kids?
Yeah.
Well, of course, they turn the kids into robots as well.
Good.
And then in 1996, there was another TV movie that was not a sequel called The Stepford Husbands, which is a whole gender reversal, but like it's playing on such specific tropes of gender conformity in the time that it was written that like I don't know that it works gender swapped.
Yeah.
I could see someone wanting to make it, but I don't know that it works.
Yeah. There's probably some weird porn of it somewhere too.
Oh, probably.
Ugh.
But then in 2004,
Not to yuck anyone's yum.
yeah, there was The Stepford Wives, a remake. Okay, directed by Frank Oz, who also directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which we watched for the show.
He's also our child's favorite fictional character.
He knows all about Yoda.
Yo yeah.
And he loves Yoda.
Yo yeah. No,
Frank-
actually I think he loves BB-8 more than Yoda.
Now he does.
BB-8.
Yeah.
BB-8.
It's super cute.
It's so cute. He's never seen Star Wars.
R2-D2.
He's never seen Star Wars. He doesn't know any of these characters. He just has like a little book
It's great.
of like the Star Wars characters. Anyway, he loves BB-8.
So it's directed by Frank Oz, and we did not like this as much as Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
No.
It was written by Paul Rudnick, who did Addams Family Values.
It's
We did not like it as much as Addams Family
It's
Values.
a very theater people movie. Like Paul Rudnick is a playwright. There's a lot of like this is like a New York cast.
It's produced by Scott Rudin.
Yeah. Who's recently disgraced Broadway
Right.
producer.
But Broadway guy is what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying. So here's a thing. 7 years earlier, Rudin produced a movie written by Rudnick, directed by Frank Oz, and it was In and Out, which was received much better
Yeah.
than this movie was. This movie was, I would say, savaged by critics and didn't make a ton of money at the box office.
I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, yeah. How much of it did you remember?
I didn't remember the end, that's for sure. I
Okay.
might have fallen asleep.
Yeah, it's, I don't know that it is the worst thing we have ever watched for the show, but I have to think about that because it might be.
When we were watching it, you said to me, "This is the worst thing we've ever seen for the show." And I said, "That can't be true." And you were like,
It's top 5.
"Think about it."
It's top 5. It is shockingly, confoundingly awful. It's just a very, very poorly made movie.
Yeah.
That is, and the reason I feel okay saying that is because I'm not dunking on it. Like, it's beneath a lot of what these people are capable of.
Yeah.
Like, almost everyone involved is capable of better work than this. It just, sometimes these things happen. You know who takes like full responsibility for the entire thing?
Oh, Frank Oz.
Total responsibility.
Yeah, didn't you find a quote that he was like, "It was really bad. I don't know what to say."
The quote is, "I fucked up." I'm gonna link to this interview that he gave. That he really goes into it, and he's just like, "It's totally my fault. I really fucked up. The budget was too big. I was trying to please too many people. Tonally, it was all over the place. One of the big things that happened happened is that it was really messed with in post-production.
Uh-huh.
And I guess the original ending of it was the more horror ending
Yeah.
from the original, but the studio did tests and audiences were like, this makes me sad.
Yeah.
So the studio was like, well, we need a happy ending. So apparently they changed the entire ending to do that. And the movie is just a mess. Like,
it's a mess.
things don't connect. There's lots of plot holes. It is just a poorly constructed movie that, again, it's kind of bafflingly bad.
It's 90 minutes long. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not super long. And honest to God, like any given 5 minutes of the movie is like 5 minutes of the 90 minutes and you're spending your time on this. Like sometimes it's satire, sometimes it's not. Like the tone is
The tone is, I was about to ask
so
you,
strange.
what would you say for you is like the biggest problem with the movie?
I don't know what it's trying to be. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what the tone is. I don't know if it's making fun of feminism. I don't know if it's making it's making fun of something, but I don't know what. Like, and the acting is so poor that like I don't know what they're trying to do. There's this one you and I both noted it. Like there's this scene that like Nicole Kidman and Matthew Broderick are the couple.
Well, let's back it up for a second.
Yeah.
So she plays Joanna Eberhardt. In this one, though, she's not like a frustrated, side hustle photographer.
Yeah.
She is the head of an entire network.
Yeah.
And the movie starts with her like doing the upfronts
Yeah.
and talking to all of the press about all the new shows they have coming out and all of the high-rated shows that they
It's
have.
all like weird reality TV.
Yeah, and then like one of the shows, like a man and a husband and a wife went on the show and they ended up splitting up because of it. And he shows up and he's got a gun and he tries to shoot her.
Yeah. So like this is so 2004 because A, we're doing some kind of social commentary about reality TV, which I believe that ship has sailed. And then B, kind of making a joke about gun violence, which is not funny and not cool.
Yeah, active shooter situations are they're just not that funny.
It's not funny and it's not satirical, like that someone would show up with a gun and like try to shoot.
Well, it is satire.
Yeah.
It just isn't effective satire.
Yeah, because it happens in real life
Like-
all the time.
Like just to kind of take a quick sidebar, like this is one of my favorite things is like I can tell that it's a comedy and I can tell that it's full of jokes. The problem is none of the jokes are funny.
Yeah, and this was the way that the movie was set up was one of the points where I was like, why are we spending time with this? It was like all of these clips from these reality shows that she's producing, and clearly the joke was like, these are very bad shows. These are bad, exploitative, like over the top TV shows, but we're spending so much time with it, and at the end of the day, like the fact that she's producing these bad TV shows and that the guy showed up with a gun and sent her into a mental breakdown and they ended up having to get out of the city and moving to Stepford, none of that came back around.
Yeah.
The reality TV stuff was nothing. The guy with the gun was nothing. Like it could have just as easily started with them like driving up to Stepford with none of this backstory, and it never came back around.
Like all of those parodies of reality TV
Yeah.
could easily have been found in another movie.
Yeah.
There was nothing about them that had anything to do because it's all gender stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is about gender.
Gender.
Everything is about men and women. You know, it's very like men of Mars. Like that's the entire joke. That's the whole joke is that men and women are different.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
I feel like it was old fashioned in 2004.
Yeah.
Like it's very, for me, like the pinnacle of that type of humor is like just a sad 80s stand up comedian talking about his wife.
Yeah, like what's the deal with feminism?
Like they wouldn't even talk about that. It's
Yeah.
just like my wife, blah, blah, blah. Like that to me is the whole thing. And
Yeah.
that's so much of the humor in this. But like Paul Rudnick and Frank Oz, they don't strike me as the kind of people who buy into it. So I definitely got the sense throughout the entire movie that they are being ironic.
Yeah.
Like all of the gender essentialism is presented ironically. The question isn't whether it's ironic or not. I think it's clearly ironic. I think the question is whether it makes the humor in the movie effective.
Yeah.
And the humor is never effective. Like, and it makes it unbelievable too, because I don't know if you were getting to this, but there is a scene that Matthew Broderick and Nicole Kidman have after they have moved to Stepford. And he says to her the line, maybe you shouldn't wear black anymore. Maybe you should try to be a housewife.
Yeah.
He says, only high-powered, neurotic, castrating Manhattan career bitches wear black.
We had to go back so you could write that line down.
So he says all of that. And then he says, is that what you really want to be? And her response is,
Ever since I was a little girl.
yeah,
So it's like clearly a joke.
it's a joke.
But I don't know who's making the joke on whom. What is who's the subject of the joke? Is she the subject of the joke because she wants to be a Manhattan career woman, or is he the subject of the joke for saying
High-powered,
something?
erotic, castrating Manhattan career bitch.
Yeah, or is he the subject of the joke for saying something so strange?
It doesn't connect.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me. And I don't feel like we're coming to this from a perspective of like, this isn't funny. This is not funny.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's funny, but I don't think it's not the subject matter that makes it unfunny. It's just I just don't think it's constructed in a way that makes the humor work.
Yeah, this movie is so 2004. It really is just like so of that time. So, okay. So she has this breakdown. There's some mental health jokes that aren't super funny.
Right.
They rock up into town. He quits his job at the network. He was VP
like a
at the
lower
network.
VP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he quits his job at the network too, like in solidarity. Oh, because she gets fired because of this like bad publicity. I don't think we explicitly mentioned that.
A quick little thing about Matthew Broderick, because Nicole Kidman's always beautiful, but
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick, he was still in his like cute phase.
Yeah,
Like-
like he looked like an adult, but wasn't like old yet.
Yeah.
He looked good.
Like
looks good in this
he looked
movie.
better than I expected him to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's got a bad haircut.
Like the short black
The
hair.
short black hair didn't work for me.
Well, apparently none of the men in Stepford thought it worked either.
Yeah.
Because by the end, she's Nicole Kidman
She's
with
Nicole
the full
Kidman.
blonde hair.
Yeah. So she's got a bad haircut. She's kind of like zonked out on whatever medication. They've got these two kids in the back seat. They rock up to this town. It's like a planned community, right? Like these, they're these
It's a gated
huge,
community.
a gated community, these huge McMansions, and they meet. I guess is she the real estate agent? Is Glenn Close? She's like in charge of the town somehow.
So Glenn Close and Christopher Walken play Claire and Mike Wellington, who are clearly in charge of the town. And everything we are given to understand, everything that's implied to us is that he's Diz.
Yeah.
He's in charge of everything. He's the head of the men's association. And Glenn Close is like, she's the Stepford wife.
She's like the perfect housewife.
She might be like the original Stepford wife of all the Stepford wives in the town.
Yeah. And she like introduces them, and she like runs the like athletic, like not they do like aerobics or something.
She brings her to an aerobics class that has all the Stepford wives there, and the thing they're all doing is like they're like chore based exercises.
Yeah, like mopping.
Yeah, and it brings up for me like one of the other things that's super clear in this movie is that the women are robots, and I want to stick a pin in that because I just said that it's clear. It ends up not being clear at all, which is weird because it's so clear that they're robots.
Yeah,
the women are robots. They all have remote controls. They all flail around and spark. And their tits can get bigger and smaller based on the remote control. Like they are robots who can malfunction. They are robots. They are not brainwashed ladies. They are robots. But then by the end, maybe they are brainwashed ladies. Like they're ladies with microchips in their brain.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
The question came up for me is like, if these are robots, why are they working out? Why is that part of their thing?
Yeah.
Because they don't need to work out.
They don't need to work out, and surely their time would be better spent cleaning their house.
Yeah.
Or like having sex with their husband.
That's the whole thing is they don't do anything that isn't for their husband. And they don't have to work out.
Yeah.
So what's the point of a scene like this? It turns out the point of the scene is just to have a joke about the fact that they're doing chore-based workouts.
Yeah.
But like the movie doesn't need it. I think they're just searching for a gag to fill the time.
Yeah. So again, this being 2004, we're going to be a little bit edgy, right? We're going to have a Jewish person, and we're going to have a gay couple in the town.
And they went very Jewish.
They chose Bette Midler and John Lovitz to be the couple.
I have a sad thing to say.
What's that?
Casting wise.
Yeah.
Because it's Nicole Kidman as Joanna and Matthew Broderick as Walter and Bette Midler as Bobby Markowitz. Markowitz now in this one.
They changed it back to Markowitz.
Yeah, her husband John Lovitz in this one. They've gone very Jewish.
Yeah.
Apparently, originally, Walter was going to be John Cusack and Bobby was going to be Joan Cusack. And they had to drop out a few weeks before filming because I think their dad died.
Oh, God.
So for family reasons, they had to drop out. And that makes me a little sad, not because I think their presence would have fixed the movie, but I feel like it's an example of one of many things that if it had been different, this movie could have been better.
I guess, but I'm like happy for them because this movie was not good.
I'm happy for them too, but think of it from Joan Cusack's perspective because she was in and Out. Written by the same screenwriter, produced by the same producer, directed by the same guy. She got an Oscar nomination for In and Out.
Yeah.
And I could see her being sad. And as a viewer, I'm sad because I love John Cusack and Joan Cusack.
Yeah.
And I actually think John Cusack is kind of perfect casting for Walter because his character is, this came up with High Fidelity, like he always plays this like aw shucks kind of nice guy that you love, but Walter's a piece of shit. And one of the things I like about John Cusack is I think he's willing to be a piece of shit
Yeah.
on film. He's not above his own image.
Yeah.
And I am a little sad that it wasn't them. I don't think Matthew Broderick's amazing in this. And Bette Midler apparently was like awful to work with.
Oh, God.
And had a lot of problems on set. And Frank Oz was like, yeah, she had a lot of stress, and her problem was she brought it to set, and she shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But he was also really understanding, because she was like just joined the cast, was working on an album, was rehearsing for a tour, and is like, she clearly had a lot of stuff going on. She just shouldn't have brought it into the movie.
Yeah,
but I understand.
It's a weird part to pick up too if you're like doing all that stuff. Like, and
Yeah.
you're Bette Midler. Like, why are you doing this? Okay, so Bette Midler's in it. She's not great. John Lovitz, there's all this weird stuff with John Lovitz's character. And then Roger Bart plays the husband of this gay couple.
One of the two husbands.
One of the two husbands. Well, he's like the Stepford wife husband.
He's going to become the Stepford husband.
He's going to become the Stepford husband. And he's like, yeah, like my husband doesn't understand me. Like he's like this gay Republican, and like I don't really get it. And I'm much more flamboyant. And it's interesting that Roger Bart, because he was in The Producers playing a like very flamboyant character also. Like I don't think he's gay in real life. It's just funny that he keeps getting cast in this type of role. And then like he gets turned before either of the two of them, right?
Yeah.
Like they turn him into this like Stepford husband, and the town is just like Pat. And I didn't get the whole running for office thing.
That's the whole thing. His big like coming out as a robot is that he is announcing his candidacy for, and I promise I'm not making this up, I genuinely don't remember what he's running
Mayor of
for.
the town, I don't know. Everyone's like very positive about it.
It could have been mayor. It could have been state senate. It could have been president.
State senator.
It doesn't matter. He's just generically running for something.
Yeah,
He's announcing his candidacy to be a candidate.
Yeah, and everyone's like very like supportive and positive about it. Like, oh, we're Stepford, like we're so progressive, like this is great. Like we've got a gay couple that lives here and whatever.
We got gay robots in this town.
We got gay robots in this town. And so then, it's the same kind of thing. Like Bobby gets turned into a robot, and like they're robots. Like they're obviously robots, I guess. As you say, like it's not clear.
Well, there's a scene that was cut that is way more explicit about them being robots, and it involves Bobby. Quick little thing. I don't want to say like this deleted scene is more evidence of the movie being bad. I would say this being a deleted scene is evidence that the movie could have been worse.
Yeah.
And thank God they cut it out, because it's very cartoony, but it's the scene where Joanna goes to visit Bobby after Bobby gets turned. And in the movie, Bobby, like her hand is over an open flame and she doesn't flinch.
Yeah.
Because she's a robot, and Joanna gets freaked out and leaves. In this version, I think she stabs her. You can I'll link to the deleted scene on YouTube, but she stabs her, and then Bobby becomes Inspector Gadget, and she starts going around the house doing all of her chores really quickly. She her finger turns into a duster and her arm turns into a vacuum hose. She's clearly a robot.
Yeah.
She's literally Inspector Gadget. It couldn't possibly be that she is just a lady with microchips in her brain.
Yeah.
It couldn't possibly be that.
Making changes to her physical body. Yeah. Okay. So it turns out, oh my God, the plot is impossible.
Can I run through my notes?
Yeah.
First, no, I already hate this. The movie's not intimate at all. That was one of the things that was nice about the original story and the original novel, is it's really intimate. It's really small. It's just about this woman comes to this new town and doesn't know anybody and makes a friend. In this one, the whole thing starts with her being this huge, successful, big person. So there's tons of characters and there's tons of attention. There's nothing intimate about it anymore. And the town's so big, and there's so many of the Stepford Wives. They have a robot dog at their house, like a CG dog that doesn't really work. Matthew Broderick talks about their marriage falling apart, even though there's no indication at all that their marriage is ever anything but good. Like when she has her mental breakdown and he goes to visit her in the hospital, they seem really good.
Yeah.
But he's then 15, 20 minutes later, he says, our marriage is falling apart, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
It's really weird. He's like, your kids hardly know you and our marriage is falling apart. And it's like, we've not seen anything to indicate that up to this point.
Yeah, in this one, Walter doesn't know about the Stepford Wives when they move to the town, because it is revealed to him that all the women are robots, because he's hanging out at the men's association and Christopher Walken is there with
and we
all
actually
these...
see the inside of the men's association, which we've never seen before.
Right? We see them actually interacting with each other there. And at one point, he says, all your wives are fantastic. How do you do it? And one of the guys goes, Christopher Walken says, hey, don't you owe him some money? And he goes, yeah. And this guy calls in his wife, and she's a goddamn ATM.
Yeah.
And she spits money. She takes a credit card in her mouth, and then she spits cash
Yeah,
out of her
it's
mouth.
really strange.
Again, they're not just women with microchips in their brains. They are robots.
Yes, but
Also, I have a pet peeve. I talk about this a lot on the show, like when something is a pet peeve of mine. One of these days, I'm going to go back through and actually gather them all together so I can actually put them together as a list. When photos in the movie are clearly photos from the movie.
oh yeah, this was funny.
I hate it so goddamn much, and it shows up way too often.
Because they had the book club, like halfway through the movie, they have the book club, and everyone's like, I like to read about, like, what was it, like Christmas ornaments.
Yeah.
And yeah, like their headshot photos were from that scene, which
There's
is
like
funny.
a scene later where she's looking at like headshots of them, but they're all clearly from that scene.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I hate that.
It's
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Terrible.
When she, the kids are gone, and because they're at a day camp,
Yeah.
and she just calls up the day camp to get the kids, and the conversation from her end is literally like, hello,
Is this the day
is
camp?
this the day camp? Like, they didn't even bother to name the day camp. She just says, is this the day camp? That's a placeholder.
It's awful.
That's first draft dialogue.
Yeah, that's like improv.
Yes.
Hello, is this the day camp?
I have a gun. It is interesting to watch a movie completely devoid of subtext. This is one of the things I wrote down because there's no subtext to anything.
Yeah.
It's all just out there. Everything is just text. Here's one of my biggest problems, and then I think we need to get to the third act, and we need to get to the denouement of this whole thing. One of the changes that's made is that in the original, it seems that the implication of why all of these men are doing this to these women is because they are all successful men, and they are all frustrated that their wives have interests other than being wives and mothers.
Yeah.
And so they want to make sure that these women all become, and having sex with them as well.
Yeah.
They want to be
I mean, obviously.
sexy wives and mothers.
Goes without saying.
That's what they want to turn them all into. In this one, though, it's a different implication because the text of the movie is that all of these guys married really powerful, important women.
Yeah.
And all of them have now become these housewives. Like, they're all important. They're authors and run TV networks and are
like
scientists and politicians.
Like doctors, astronauts, like these really important women. And we didn't really mention this in the book, but like the closest thing to that in the book is that like Joanna finds out at one point that like there used to be a women's club in the town.
Yeah.
And like I think it was Carol Van Sant like used to be the president. And so she asks her like, what was this about? Like, why is there no women's club anymore? And she's just like, oh, we didn't have time for it anymore. No one was really interested. So they've sort of taken that idea that like a woman might have an interest and have a club and taken that all the way to like these were very, very, very high powered women who all for some reason married total schmoes.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense that any of these women would have married these shitty little guys.
Yeah.
They are the worst. They're terrible.
They're terrible.
To me, that doesn't track.
Because the thing in the book is like these are, and maybe even more so in the original movie, it's like average guys, average women, and the guys upgraded when they got the robot women.
Right.
So they're all really hot now, as you say. Like they're all like the best, most attractive possible version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason all the women are so beautiful and the men are so average is because they took that upgrade when they made them into robots. Not that they were married to people that were so exceptional to begin with.
Yeah, it's like they're all below average men married to exceptional women.
Yes, and it's like again,
and that's the whole thing is the reason they did it is because they all have a chip on their shoulder about the fact that they were jealous of their women.
Yeah, and like sort of again like the biggest plot flaw, if you really want to like dig into it this way and like sort of like,
which I do,
you don't understand women, is like none of these women would have given these men the time of day like in the first place. They would never have been in this position. Like they wouldn't have married these awful douchebags.
Yeah,
like presumably.
So
not
anyway,
all of them anyway.
There's a big scene that happens where she gets turned into a robot. We think. And there is it's a robot body.
Yeah.
There is like a table that comes up from the floor, and there's a Nicole Kidman on the table, and she opens her eyes, and they're like a doll's eyes, just like in the original. And then the scene kind of fades out, and then we get the supermarket scene. And there she is, Nicole Kidman in her blonde glory.
Yes.
Now a robot. But then the movie keeps going, and we get more. And there is a whole scene where there's a giant party at the Wellingtons, Glenn Close and Christopher Walken. Giant scene with all the Stepford wives and all of the husbands. And Matthew Broderick goes down to the basement and like turns off all the microchips that are controlling all of these women because he feels bad about what he did. And turns out she is not a Stepford wife.
Yes, it's this big action scene. Matthew Broderick has to go in and save the day.
But like, it's not a big action scene. He just walks to a basement and punches some buttons.
Well, we're meant to think it's suspenseful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things that are just said. Like she says to Christopher Walken, "I was never a Stepford wife," like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it feels tacked on, which I think makes sense given that from every indication it was tacked
Based on
on.
my understanding, yeah.
And then there's another reveal where Christopher Walken gets his head knocked off because he's a robot. Like, pistons and wires and stuff like that connecting his brain, his head to the rest of his body. He's a robot. Turns out Glenn Close, not the original Stepford wife, turns out she's the genius behind the whole thing.
Oh my God, I was wrong. It was Earth all along.
And her whole plan is that everyone will get turned into these people because she was a scientist and she did all of these great things, but then she realized it's not what she wanted. What she wanted was to be a homemaker. So in order to do that, she had to use all of her science and be a powerful lady.
Yeah. There's some religious stuff in this too, there's some Jesus-y stuff in this.
Some conservatism and things like that. Yeah, it's in there. But the problem is not so much with the idea, the problem is the execution. Because the way all of this comes out is she just explains the whole plan to everybody.
She monologues the whole thing, and at this point, like all the women, again, as you say, have just essentially had their chips turned off. So they're just normal women again. But as you pointed out, like clearly they've been robots this whole time.
Yeah.
So like what is that about? Like there's just no internal consistency as far as like what they actually are.
None whatsoever. Like considering they're so obsessed with answering the question of what they are, it seems like they don't actually know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
It is a problem.
And the way the scene is staged is really weird. And this to me screams reshoots because all of the women wake up and all get really mad at their husbands. But then the rest of the scene plays out with the argument happening between Glenn Close and Christopher Walken and Nicole Kidman and Matthew Broderick. It's all happening at the party, but all of the Stepford wives are kind of facing away from them and are towards the edges of the room. None of them are actually watching what's happening.
Yeah.
Even though what's happening is clearly the center of attention.
Yeah.
But like no one's watching it. The staging of it reeks of like something's missing. Like they had to cover for something. Like maybe the women weren't released at the end of it originally,
or they were like all different people, so we couldn't see any of their faces because they had to get a bunch of different extras in or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we watch that really shitty like MTV Wuthering Heights,
where
it's so obvious that none of the characters at a party were actually paid to have lines,
right?
Because conspicuously no one talks
speaks,
ever. And this reeks of that.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. And then Glenn Close kisses the head of her Christopher Walken bot and it electrocutes her and kills her.
And that's the end.
And is there an epilogue?
No, because they don't like move back to the city or anything. I don't think there is an epilogue.
Is that just kind of the end?
I think that's just the end.
It just ends limp and useless.
Yeah.
It's a mess of a movie. It is a shocking mess of a movie.
Really bad.
And no, it does end. No, there is an epilogue because all the men are now at the supermarket doing all the shopping.
Right. And John Lovitz is like, I don't know where to find the bananas.
And so the fucking implication in this is that all of these amazing women who have all been deeply, deeply victimized
are still married
to these assholes. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You're right. It's really bad.
It's really bad.
It's really bad.
Do you have anything else to say about it? I would recommend watching it just because it is shockingly and bafflingly bad, and everyone in it is capable of better and has done better. I find it just fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Maybe the worst thing we've ever watched for the show in a lot of respects.
It's on the list. All right. Let's do these quadrants.
Do you want to do some quadrants?
Yeah.
Okay. 1975. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Totally.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think
totally.
so?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think William Goldman cared about the source material? Like, how much do you think he cares about source material that he adapts?
I don't know that he necessarily always does.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he did because he left in a lot of the original lines from the movie and a lot of the plot. I think they cared.
Yeah. I think they probably cared in as much as that, like, it's a really fun sci-fi thriller.
Yeah. I don't think they. Here's my like barometer for whether they cared or not. Like, did they get it? And I
Yeah.
felt like they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they cared about it from like a feminist perspective,
No.
even though I think they appreciated that aspect of it.
But I don't even know that Ira Levin was writing it from a feminist perspective.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Was it successful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the most amazing movie ever, but like it's successful.
It's good.
2004, do you think they cared about the source material?
I do not.
I don't think so. This is the baffling movie. And is it successful?
One of the least successful of all time, I would say.
Like way there in the corner. There in the corner. Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapter Parish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
Would you like me to make you a sandwich?
Yeah, would you get in the kitchen? Just do that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, do you need me to change a poopy diaper right now?
Yeah, probably.
Let me go change a poopy diaper.
Go change a poopy diaper.